Welcome to What's on Your Radar, the 30-minute fast-paced live stream that shares senior cybersecurity professional insight on topics that are intriguing to us. My name's Gerald Auger, and we're broadcasting from Simply Cyber, the YouTube channel designed to help you make and take a cybersecurity career further, faster. I'm joined by Eric Taylor and Don Weber today. Thanks, guys, for being here. If you're looking to get in the field or already practicing, I guarantee you there will be value delivered to you today and entertainment. Eric's boiling under the collar. So get active in chat. We'd love to hear your thoughts on these matters. Now let's get into the stream and find out what's on your radar. Hey, Eric. Hey, Don. Good to see you guys. How you doing?
What's going on, gentlemen?
Doing
Nothing.
well. Good to see you.
So it seems like we're kind of having a vendor themed episode of Radar today. So Eric, why don't you get the tone set by telling us what's on your radar?
Oh, here we go. Strap in, ladies and gentlemen. So I really don't, it really irks me. So I've been seeing a lot of stuff that's been coming out in the news feeds and everything. Oh, let me scoot over a little. There we go. So I want to ask people, why are reports from Five Eyes still coming out and other security firms doing analysis of why RDP is still open? Why in God's name is Log4Shell still a thing? Why is exchange exploits still a thing? We've got so many. I know we have a deficit of people who can actually do a bunch of cybersecurity things. I get it, but I know at least 10 companies that are looking for work that would be happy to do a scan for you, really cheap. And you even have free programs like Shodan that could do at least a pretty decent beginner one, if you will. And it's free for a lot of, if you just put in one or two IP addresses, I believe. Why are people not doing the basics? And it's driving me nuts. I want to really come up with a program or something where this may be just beating a dead horse, because I feel like there's a ton of programs out there already of, this is the basics that you should be doing. Even though I do think CIS and everybody else is doing a fair job of trying to educate, I don't know. It really has, like you said, it's got me hot under the collar. I don't understand it. That's for me today.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd love to chime in on that. So I think that it's a multi-layered issue, right? So we're cybersecurity professionals. We definitely understand how easy it can be and how silly it is to do nothing. But if you look at the business's seat, right? They don't understand what we do. And a lot of times, and we talked about this on last week's Radar, they think that IT is information security, and the fact that they are getting email and their computer can go to Google, then they're aces. And it doesn't really resonate. And I think this is why you see such a heavy investment, almost an overcorrection after a business suffers a breach, of investing heavily into cybersecurity, because it's only then do they realize that they have this massive blind spot that they haven't been addressing. And there's really no amount of speaking or explaining that can really have as much impact as actually suffering an incident. And I can just, speaking from experience, now granted, I got brought in to build a program at this company, so they did have some idea of investing in security, but we had the first stage of a ransomware attack where endpoint or end user fell victim, clicked on, pulled down, executed first stage, then it reached out for the payload, and it got like garbled on the way and didn't detonate fully. Whatever it was, it didn't detonate, or the EDR caught it. I can't remember. I remember that we saw ransomware and it didn't detonate, and you couldn't find a better situation for someone like me. A near miss, all of the value of a ransomware attack on us without any of the downside of having to deal with a ransomware incident. I got more funding. I got urgent funding. I got a SecOps capability like almost instantly. So there is real value, but unfortunately, I think it's like out of sight, out of mind, or sheer ignorance that is the defining reason for these these gaps?
Well, look, every information security professional goes through different stages in their the life cycle of their career. We all start out with, oh my gosh, there's so many things out there. I've got to learn all of these things. It's really hard and difficult. It's actually difficult for people to stay in this. There's so many domains now. You kind of have to get to that point where either I'm going to focus on a domain or I'm going to be broad, have a breadth of knowledge rather than a depth, and dive in where I can. Okay. Then we move to that stage with, why aren't people just addressing this? This is, these are the basics. Why can't people do the basics right? And then after a few years of experience at that, and just like being troubled by it and burdened, and sometimes staying up at night because of your organization or a specific client, that you worry about, eventually you get around to, hey, you know what? We're going to always have these questions, whether it's at this organization or we address it at this, or I look somewhere else. And that's just because people are always, the businesses are constantly changing. The people that are managing and doing administration of it are changing, or we move to another location. And, we shouldn't burden ourselves too much associated with the decisions that people have made. Because it can really, that leads to burnout, right? And if you can get past that, if you can get back past that burnout and past that frustrations point, and realize that we're in a job where we're constantly having to educate people, whether it's administrators, other information security professionals, or the executive management, we have to be considerate of, we're going to say the same things over and over again, and hopefully we will get penetration.
Yeah, absolutely. Like some people have said in the chat, we just feel like we're beating a dead horse. So
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm trying to get our names to come up here. Hold on 1 second. Keep talking, Don. I turned the flag on, but it's not showing up. So please.
Yeah,
keep going.
You really kind of, we have to understand the motivation for an organization. Eric, you talked about, why can't people do the basics? Okay. I instantly go to like a startup company. And actually one of the conversations that I had today with Stephen Hilt, he works for Trend Micro, their research team, and they just released a write-up about his experiences around cloud tunneling and some insecurities around that and leveraging that. And the organization that he was talking about, that they kind of focused on, because of COVID, they got a huge spike in the amount of people using their services, and they more than 10 times multiplied their employees that they needed to support this. And you consider that from an infrastructure standpoint, and they're making decisions to make sure that the business is running, providing the services that they need, paying the people the families that they brought on to assist this. And certainly, hopefully they had considered some of the security things in their design, but at the same time, they're doing this massive expansion very, very quickly. And certainly they are going to run into security issues, whether they're complex ones, which are hard to understand and discover. And sometimes it's just those easy, low-hanging fruit that just got missed because they were moving at light speed. And that's what we're here for. That's why we have this experience, that we can identify those things and go in and assist those to reduce that when they're able to listen. And Grok actually listened to Stephen and his team. So it was pretty good.
Yeah, hearing you talk about it, I do think maybe a different approach to some of this stuff is educating people or businesses to consider OPSEC as part of their business model. You're running a business, certain, you always, like a long time ago, we always had, we had a bunch of lawyers that we were doing work for, and most of them, especially the quote unquote ambulance chasers that you see the funny ads and all that stuff, they always dedicate like 10 or 15% of any revenue that they got to their marketing budget. I know a lot of companies do a certain percentage to marketing. Maybe we just need to educate, look, 2%, 3%, 4%, whatever that magic percentage is, that needs to be dedicated to OPSEC. So that way If you don't have it internally, you can hire somebody externally to help you guide you down this path. You know, maybe
Right.
that's a better way of doing it.
Well, also the executive management, they need to start asking tougher questions, and they also need to start trusting and trusting but verifying what is being told to them by their CTOs and their CIOs and their CISOs. And usually it's not the CISOs. The CISOs are usually pretty honest, about the situation, because that's the integrity, that's their job. But
Mhm.
I've got a buddy. He's got an organization. They do a lot. I still consider them like a medium, be small, between a small and medium sized business, but they're a huge construction company, and their IT staff, basically they're like, "Hey, are we secure? Yeah, we're good to go," because they don't want to say that they don't know how to do their jobs, right? And they take into consideration authentication and stuff like that, but they don't actually do the deep dives that we would expect out of some of our, like I said, security professionals with knowledge around a specific domain.
Yeah, I really like what you said, Don, about kind of the InfoSec professional's life cycle. I do feel, as I was listening, maybe it's my own experience, but like I do feel like you missed the apathy stage where you're just like, oh, to hell with it. Like this, just whatever. If it happens, it happens. I'm sick of saying the same crap to all these people, and then that phase passes, and then you're like, all right, how can I meet
At,
them halfway or
at
something like
that
that.
stage, go for walks, go to the beach, do some other project, and do just like the daily grind, because you're going to do your business. So just do just enough to get by, make sure you're doing your job, and you'll eventually get through that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
the whole
So
burnout effect, yeah.
yeah, maybe it's not a phase, maybe it's just burnout. Uh, Don, what's on your radar?
Well, I mean, it's pretty similar, and it's kind of what we've been talking about. Over at Cutaway Security, we're helping a team. We augment teams, and in this case, what we're doing is we're reviewing the documentation and implementation for a security vendor because their client has asked for it, and that's a big thing. Is, hey, clients need to start holding their vendors responsible. But at the same time, the vendors need specific guidance. Okay, what do you expect? What are your policies? What are your expectation around these certain things? Do you own that, or do I own that? And certainly that needs to, oh, fine, I own that. Well, guess what? We're going to have to go in and talk about our service level agreements and how much more time I'm going to have to spend. So there is a lot of complexity into this. Who's responsible, who's going to address this, right? And it's really difficult in the control industry, so the industrial control, SCADA and stuff like that. It's a lot more difficult because a lot of projects are planned out years in advance. 3 years for a project just to get it implemented is a short time period. Sometimes it's longer. So a lot of times you'll buy all of that equipment and that technology, and by the time you actually get it deployed, it's already that vendor has moved on. They're actually creating new things. And so, what's good now is that we're helping this vendor go through and identify where their documentation and their process is going to be improved for doing new implementations. And one of the things that really pop out at me is that in this environment we have these process engineers and operators that are deploying these technologies. Okay, and when I say these technologies, I'm talking about custom software and services, but on Windows operating systems, leveraging things like Apache or IIS, Oracle databases, and so forth. And they know how to get them up and running really well. Okay, get them running and working to do that job. So once they test, they're like, hey, the process works. What they're not is they're not web server administrators, database administrators. So when you go into these environments, the operating system might be secured because they're getting that from their clients, but you go start looking at the configuration of the web server or the database, and it's insecure. And that's not what, well, we can blame the vendor who has these process engineer experts. They're double E's, chemical engineers, some of them with PhDs, super smart people, but they are not web server administrators. We shouldn't be expecting them to configure the web server. right? We should be parceling that out to the subject matter experts. And, I encourage the vendors to do that, but I also encourage the clients to realize that, hey, yes, you're going to have to come in on the back end, trust but verify, and that sometimes give them help. So, I mean, that's kind of what we're talking about, and I'm working on.
Yeah, well, a couple of things you said that made me think. You talk about how these. It sounds like you use more of a traditional waterfall kind of development life cycle where you plan everything out and then you start executing on the implementation of the project. So it's you don't. It's so rigid and so monolithic that it's very difficult to move or pivot 2 years into a 4-year project because you just don't have the flexibility to do it. It makes me think how kind of the US government or the military system works. There was a recent story that seems very germane here. Starlink got deployed over Ukraine, and there was something about the way Starlink worked that the Russian military could intercept and disrupt the communications. And it was discovered, and a fix was understood how to do it. And Tesla or Starlink or whatever, whoever does it, they tested it, rolled it out, and within like 48 hours, that attack was completely nullified, and Ukraine was back up and running. And some 4-star general was not openly weeping, but was basically like lamenting about how amazing it is that they could do that. And if it was the same technology, same everything, except it was a US military operation, it would have taken months to get that change put in place. And that still would have been an emergency change. It just would have been months of bureaucracy and testing and validation and all this stuff. So it just makes me think, I wonder sometimes, Don, if it's the sheer size and scope of industrial control systems that industry. I don't want to say industrial industry because that seems a little redundant, but I wonder if it's because the stakes are so high that if you dick up a oil and gas manufacturing plant, you could blow it up, you could kill people, you could knock out energy to Texas or whatever. So I wonder if it's abundance and caution, or if it's just the way we've done it for so long and there's never been an opportunity because there's no new tech players in the space to introduce more modern approaches to solutions.
We have to be careful around that, and trust and believe that any organization that has a process that needs an immediate change to put in to continue operations, they will do it. And they've got very specific business continuity and disaster recovery plans to ensure that's in place. So if there is a security issue that does have that negative impact, and they know that it's potentially actively or going to be targeted, they can take those actions. And so but at the same time, there's still going to be a large amount of testing. So it's kind of hard to pinpoint very specific things because it really depends on the scope of things and so forth. So really the stuff that I was talking about was more in line with associated with normal operations. Okay, normal operations that things are going in, and once it's working in a lot of these areas, you don't touch it. It's working, you don't touch it. Oh, we've got this vulnerability where people can bring things down. Okay, now we got to test it. Or now we've got to touch it. Let's test it. Test. Do a slow rollout. A few things, and then push it out more broadly. Okay. But it's that if it's not a significant risk, because they've got methodologies for evaluating whether the risk exceeds the operational needs. Okay. And that's a part of their risk calculations, and that's already in place, and really, from a security aspect, that just kind of moves into that, and they leverage that. So that, saying that it's not fair to say that they can't, implement something that quickly.
So what's on your radar?
Well, then
Gerald?
I'll be careful. I'll be careful about that then. What's on my radar? Well, thank you for asking. Since we're talking vendors, kind of flipping the script a little bit, guys. I did a massive amount of research on Conti leaks this week. Okay, I had Dave Klein on yesterday on Simply Cyber Live to talk about emulating Conti in your environment and everything, and basically got into the leaks, got into Krebs. Krebs did a 5-part series on Conti ransomware group based on the leaks, and I just wanted to share with you guys how unbelievable this threat actor group is. Now, Conti is the ransomware software, right? That's the malware. And a lot of times we'll kind of assign the name of the malware to the threat actor group, almost like one and the same. I did a little bit of research. Wizard Spider is apparently the threat actor group that made TrickBot, and now Conti was using TrickBot in order to get its ransomware deployed into an environment. But over time, and you can find this in the leaks, they basically become the exclusive user of TrickBot, and then they just kind of acquire TrickBot in like a weird dark arts acquisition kind of thing, merger and acquisition. So with Conti, a couple of things that I really want people to understand. One, they had valid licenses for software. They had a licensed, legitimate version with support and patches and feature updates of Cobalt Strike, right? So they paid some company 30 grand to go buy them Cobalt Strike and bring it back to them. So they had this advanced stage 2 payload exploitation kit, fully featured and functional. They also had literally they built it like a business. They were like a Fortune 50 company because they made, I think, maybe $180 million last year. They had different departments, including an HR department for interviewing new talent, and like when they let everybody go and fire people, like kind of an not exit interview, but basically explaining here's what's happening, here's how it goes, like true HR fashions. They had a department for coders that would write malware and update the malware. They had a department for testers. This is crazy. So, we've got our major EDR solutions, right? Sentinel-1, Microsoft Defender. What's the Cobalt one, or what's the big one that I'm not Carbon Black, the one that begins with a C? I'm totally
CrowdStrike.
CrowdStrike. Thank you. I always get CrowdStrike and Cobalt Strike. I'm like, what the hell? So they literally had licenses to all of the main EDRs, and the coders and the testers would work in parallel. So the coders would update Conti, and then the testers would run it on their own machine with Sentinel-1 on it. And if it didn't detonate, they would send it back to the testers and say, here's where it got caught. And then they'd send it back to the coders, and then the coders would update the code and they would run it. And they're in this cyclical life of always trying to beat the testers. And then as soon as they get through the testers, then it would go on to the pen tester and hackers for deployment. They have reverse engineers who are looking at the EDRs in order to understand how to circumvent them and stuff like that. It's just absolutely. And then they had management, of course, right? There's always this management layer, Michael Scott, walking around kind of thing. So another interesting thing, you want to talk about how hardcore this group is? Because I feel like a lot of times when we talk about cyber criminals, yeah, they work hard, but it's they're on a yacht, or they're driving a Ferrari, and occasionally they'll just do malware and then, go on. These guys, the EDR clients were getting updated every 4 hours. Microsoft Defender is specifically referenced in the leaks. Every 4 hours, they would have to update the testers and the coders on, hey, this is the updates. And they literally had teams working around the clock to keep these code repos up, because Microsoft was moving as fast as they could in order to, a new sample comes out of Conti, Microsoft Defender is right there, right behind it. So in order to keep their ransomware as a service model going, in order to be that kind of platform as a service provider, they had to have this level of uptime and upkeep. And it just blows my mind that this is way beyond a cyber criminal enterprise of 5 thugs operating out of the back of an Italian restaurant kitchen. You know what I mean? It was way more sophisticated, and that's what's on my radar. I'm more than willing to talk about other stuff, but my 5 minutes is up, and I want to allow for open discussion.
No, that's great, because on my side of the fence, because I deal with a lot of those folks, it is a business to them. The people that they hack, they will literally call you when you're in those open negotiations. You are their client. no, we're not your client. You breached the network. You know, I mean,
Yeah,
so
it's
these guys,
perverse how
yeah,
they view it.
Well, I mean, it's if you want to keep making money, you will be organized. You know,
yeah,
it's and you know what making money is a business. So I would imagine, don't be surprised if those criminals have, you know, degrees, masters, you know, bachelor's, masters, MBAs, you know, and who knows. It's difficult to really, you know, predict and understand why people have moved in that direction. You know, it's you know, I remember Ed Scotus writing a story, you know, a short story, and this was like 15 years ago, and it was about a, you know, a man in Nigeria who just wanted to feed his family and started writing spam, you know, and made enough money to start feeding his family and move into a house. And how can you really blame him for doing that? You know, but at the same time, when you see the effects that it is on our society in the United States, yeah, we're definitely blaming them, right? But at the same time, there are criminals. You know, they're just flat out criminals that, you know, their original objectives, or they have less morals and stuff like that, and they're going after it. So it's, you know, this is really an international thing. It's, you know, different societies have different expectations around, you know, personal, how you approach your, you know, daily lives. And it's to think that this is a criminal activity and not just a business. Well, that's a U.S. thing, or maybe, you know, in some European countries. In other countries, it's just a living.
it
Yeah.
is.
Well, and I was thinking too, it's like if you think about the threat actors, I mean, it's not, it is person on person crime. So there is a victim, and like, you know, like you said, Don, like questionable morals, your ethics, like how can you rob someone and not feel bad for that person? But at the same time, if you view United States citizens as fat, gluttonous, capitalistic pigs, like I'm not talking about you, Eric, but like, listen, I mean, if you really feel that that's what Americans are, then maybe attacking an American doesn't really bother you, because you're like, they're keeping up with the Kardashians. They have money that they blow on stupid stuff. Like, who cares? They've got it to spend. So there could be some of that going on in place there. But there was one other thing I wanted to share with you guys about this gang that is just, oh, I don't know if you know this, Eric, but another fascinating thing that blew my mind was that they actually have people on the take, which doesn't surprise me. But people like, so I guess when you get ransomware and you're dealing with the insurance company, there are like ransom negotiators that get involved. I've heard of them. I don't really know too much about them. Oh, you're one. So Conti has ransom negotiators on payroll. Like, so let's just say for this argument, Eric is on payroll with Conti. So they'll ask him, okay, hey, how much is the client willing to spend? Like they have
Mhm.
asymmetrical information, right? So they've asked for $40 million. The client isn't going to pay 40. They're willing to pay up to 28. And that was said in a closed door room. And then you come back and say, we want the ransom lowered to 20, or no, to 10, right? And you come back and say, we'll lower it to 28, like that maximum number. And they can hit it because they have an insider on it. And in exchange, you get 5% or whatever the max take is. So you've incentivized the person on the take to max the ransom as well, which is totally screwed up.
So yeah, to talk about that for a second, because I went down that deep dive hole because I was kind of curious how it really worked. So just like you have an enrollment to be, you know, a pen tester or a hacker for the ransomware as a service, which Conti is one of, there was also an affiliate or an IR firm could register and, you know, submit their deals. Like the company just hired us to do the DFIR. Um, and, you know, we could register that deal with them. It's like, hey, we're the IR firm that's handling this case, you know, blah, blah, blah. So it was kind of, but the whole, I mean, Don will know this because I mean, he's taught SANS and I'm in SANS. And, you know, a lot of the stuff is you don't want to, when you're doing this thing, you don't present yourself as an IR firm unless you're just really trying to screw with the guys, which Coveware did, and they really pissed off Conti. Like even in their pages, when you would go to communicate, if you are part of Coveware, we don't want to talk to you. Like unless you say you're with Coveware, they're not going to know you're with Coveware, right? I mean, you're
Yeah.
on tour, so. But yeah, I mean, they really messed them up a little bit just by dragging everything out and everything until the client could be able to do what they had to do. But yeah, I mean, there was a whole kickback and affiliate program, and it really was like a multi-level marketing type of thing with ransomware tied
Yeah.
into it.
That sounds now that is ethically questionable and morally bankrupt if someone's hiring you to come help them and you're an affiliate on them. Let me just take one quick question. Either of you guys know, Jess asks, are there any good resources to understand how criminal gangs train their employees?
All the leaks and disclosures, just read them. Like literally, if you go in and look at the Krebs release on Conti, you'll see like even the folks that were doing the breaches, they were in chat. Hey, how in the heck do I get Screen Connect to work again? How do I get this to work again? How do I get, like, they had the whole freaking help desk. So I mean,
Yep.
just going
Yeah.
through and reading all that stuff, it's
A nice, entertaining way to understand that a little bit better is go listen to Darknet Diaries. I mean, it's some of the conversations that he has with individuals that are investigating, but also have lived in that industry. And when he talks about some of the forums, the underground forums, and so forth, they absolutely talk about training and sharing of information, and withholding information as well. But it's training as a cyber criminal is just the same as training as an information security professional. Getting out there, doing it, failing, falling on your face, and picking yourself back up, understanding your motivations and driving towards that. So that's how they do it.
the follow-up question though, when you start really thinking about ransomware as a whole, as a global issue, take for granted the whole re-evil hack, which I do think, not to get political, but I do think Putin did some arrest to appease the US government. Look, we did something, yay, party
Don't
time.
look over here.
Yeah. On a global threat landscape, there's not much repercussions for those who are hacking into America. Unless the FBI goes out and says we want these hackers or whatever. Unless, if you're we'll use the multi-level marketing, if you will. If you're one of the bottom feeder type of ransomware groups or whatever, like Stop or whatever, that just keeps changing their stuff, yeah, they're not going to really come after you. But once you get to a certain notoriety and a certain level of fame and start attracting that attention, that's when they're going to come after you, right? So
right. Well, I mean, it's the criminals have been dealing with this since the beginning of time. It's you can look at read all kinds of books. I was just watching a special how they were talking about a New York and how New York got cleaned up. Now it's getting it's going back to some of the olden days and stuff like that. But it's we have all of these cycles in our normal lives. Criminals have that as well. So criminals having safe havens in places like China and Russia and some other countries. Yeah, that's going to happen, and then eventually that'll go away, and they'll move to where they need to go. But the global economy, the ability for cloud services, the internet is an anonymous place, and the ones who survive learn how to take advantage of that, move it around, either moving their resources and sometimes moving themselves around as well. So it's the smart ones don't get caught. Yeah, it's and I'm not, but it's all in numbers of games. Eventually they will get caught. And but what effect does that have on them? Are they going to go to a jail in Norway, or are they going to go to a jail in Thailand, or are they going to go to jail in the United States? It's there's where do you want to get caught?
I mean, unless there's extraditions, like what happened with the original programmer Reevil that got extradited to the U.S. and is now in a U.S. prison. So,
Which is probably better than some of the prisons in the countries that they're originally at. So
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
because I see your EGA hanging there on the flag. It's a classic case of adapt and overcome, though.
Oh, Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much to our panel and to our chat for being here today. Genuinely appreciate the engagement, guys. We're at 40 people, which is a new record for Radar. Very cool. If you got value out of the show, help a friend out by sharing with your social media network a link to this stream and your honest thoughts about it. We'd like to reach as many people that can benefit from these type of conversations. Go to simplycyber.io/streams to find out all the upcoming Simply Cyber content, right? We've got Radar, First Things First, Simply Cyber Live, all those good things. Like, subscribe, obviously hit the bell. So when we go live, you guys will get told and have a quick link to drop right in there with us. Thanks, everybody, and have a great weekend.
Thanks, y'all. Good to see you.